cover. All right, so welcome everyone to our webinar on navigating buying groups. I am Laura Hall. I am the head of marketing and customer success at Revegy. And just in seeing this is really the Chris and Jess show. We have Chris Cameron, who is our sales director, and then we have Jessica Stevens, who's joining us from Blackhawk Network, and she is the director of global RevOps there. And so with that, I will turn it over to you two.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm obviously happy to be here, guys, and sharing some ideas. I'm really glad that Jess can join us today. Jess has a really unique background in that she has sold, she's managed sellers, and now being in the RevOps role. I think Jess can give us a lot of really unique perspectives, both as a seller and as a buyer, as we think about navigating these buying groups.
Definitely.
So what we're going to cover, effectively, how to effectively research the buying groups, right? How are we finding who these people are? How are we identifying who these stakeholders and champions are? We're going to share some of the new personas that have popped up in recent years that we're bumping into. You guys may have some others that you've found. Different things that we want to track as we're building these out, and ways that we can leverage our internal partners, shameless plug for marketing, to help get into these different buying groups. And obviously we will have a Q&A. So if you do have questions, please put those in the Q&A. And then Laura is going to make sure that we get those answered for you during the conversation here. All right. So this is something that we've actually talked a lot about. I saw a stat from Gartner the other day, and what it said is buyers are actually spending 17% of their time doing independent research. So before they ever talk to a salesperson, and sometimes even before they ever form a buying group, we start to see some of those signals, content downloads, website visits, and all that. Jess, I mean, from your perspective, I know we sell into slightly different industries, right? But are you guys sort of seeing the same thing where folks are spending a lot of time up front doing that research?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. By the time the buyers hit us and hit our SDR team, they've done significant research. And I can vouch for that just in our interactions between our companies.
That's so, yeah, I think we saw interactions from you and your team back in like January of 2021. Yes. And then by the time you and I got together, it was October.
It was, yeah. We did lots of research.
I mean, ultimately, I think it leads to a better conversation, though, because by the time we talked, I mean, your requirements were already super refined. Like you knew exactly what you were looking for. And it ultimately led less to selling and more of a collaborative, can we do this together or not?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the benefits of the research on both sides up front, right? The research that us as buyers do and the research that sellers do. By the time you have those good conversations, you're actually having, like you said, that collaborative conversation. It's not a this is why you need to buy from me. These are our what's in it for me. It's what's in it for me, but a collaborative what's in it for me. It's what's in it for both of us.
Yeah. Yeah, the other thing that I saw that was interesting too, I think it was actually during a webinar that we did with Forrester back over the winter. And they said that the average enterprise buying cycle is still 4 months, right? So from the time where a buying group is formed to the time where you actually, go through commercials and sign contracts is still 4 months. But the evaluation period, where you actually, from where you start doing research and start forming that internal group, is actually 12 to 18 months, inclusive of that sort of final 4. And that's sort of the perfect example of it, right? You spend all that upfront time doing research. And I think the challenge for us as sellers is identifying really, where does that switch flip, right? It's like, where does it go from evaluation and sort of independent research to actually finalizing, okay, we're in a buying cycle now.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think that's where, from the seller's perspective, I would say that's where engaging with marketing is really, really key. Understanding what their parameters are to convert it from a lead to an opportunity, a true opportunity, and where the seller can take it on and continue to move it. from the buyer's perspective, it's really the increased engagement, right? As I do research and as I narrow down my options, those companies will start to see more interaction from me, whether it's requesting demos or white space papers, whatever the case may be. They're going to see more coming from me.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think the marketing interaction piece is huge. So I know for us at Revegy, we've taken sort of not just an account-based marketing or account-based selling perspective, but we sort of take that really account-based experience. So as we go through, like we really do have that super close collaboration with marketing. And to your point, Jess, it starts out with that lead scoring, right? Like as we're going through, like what actions are really leading to us saying, yes, this person is engaging enough
Right.
for us to say, hey, SDR team, let's reach out to these folks. Or in some cases, they're already reaching out to us, whether it's website chat or to schedule a demo. Yeah, I think that collaboration with marketing is really important to make sure that we are engaging at the right time.
Definitely. I see that on our internal side as well, with our sellers and our marketing teams. We actually make sure that our sellers understand what those parameters are to do that flip from a lead to gaining that opportunity.
People are going to think that I'm paying y'all off to tout the joys of working with marketing, but I swear I'm not.
I promise she's not.
I'm not going to confirm or deny that. No. All right. So I'm going to flip ahead here. On the seller side, I think, as we flip towards the, how do we actually build out these buying groups? For us, we're doing a ton of research up front. Within Revegy, as we're going through and we think about prospecting, it's going to be a shameless Revegy plugin, I'm sorry. But we actually build out relationship maps ahead of time. So as we're thinking about what the buyer group could look like or should look like, we work closely with Laura and the marketing team, and we start thinking about who are those key personas that we need to be thinking about, right? Who's actually popping up in those conversations? So for us as selling to salespeople, right? It's who's your CRO, who's your VP or EVP of sales, who's in revenue operations, who's in sales enablement, right? And the different roles that fall under those groups. And to the point of the slide here, like we're using all of these tools. I don't know, Jess, I don't know if you guys do things. I know you guys are selling into different groups. So I don't know if there's different tools that you're using or different ways that you're thinking about building out the groups.
No, I mean, it's aside from our personas being slightly different, we do the same kind of research from a selling perspective. Pretty much all of the same sales tools that you've got on the screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other one, and this is sort of a fun one. I actually have alerts set up in LinkedIn. So if people are posting jobs for personas that I like to go after, if like for instance, I have an alert set up for VP of sales in Boston. And so I'm watching to see, okay, what companies are these? And then I'll keep watching those companies and to see, is it someone that I know or that I've worked with before, that I've sold to before, that ends up taking that role, just to see if that's a good place to potentially start with a warmer conversation versus cold outreach. Yeah, the other one too, I think using the like the G2, I even use Glassdoor as I'm looking for this, just to figure out, is there a need at the company, and two, like, are there folks within the company that are being thought of as like thought leaders or like really interesting people within the organization, because we always say, supports the CEO, or I love my VP of sales or whatever. Kind of cool, interesting ways to find some of these different personas that are having really a big influence within the organization and might be part of those buying groups. Laura, any other ways that you guys are thinking about building out the groups from a marketing perspective?
From our perspective, this is kind of it. We're looking at for buying signals. We have the MarTech platforms. So what I would say for those internal points about working with marketing, working with customer success, other salespeople, I could see that Jess was on our website back in January. And of course, you don't tell sales that early because you don't want to annoy the person doing research with a pesky salesperson calling them until they're ready to talk. But if you do need information, I mean, even existing customers, if you're coming up on a renewal or you think you have an expansion idea, reach out. I mean, the marketing might have some kind of intelligence that they haven't been able to just, one-off hand off to you. But if you ask, you can definitely get some more information that way. And then the other piece of it too would be sales is on there, because I think I gave this example when we were talking the other day. But like if Chris is selling into a company that's in the automotive industry and he's not familiar with that industry, with the key personas he might need to talk to, but Jess has a current customer in the automotive industry, he should bring her into the account planning session or the opportunity planning session and get her advice. Because he might not know that they use a chief strategy officer that he needs to talk to or something else. And a lot of these companies are organized the same in similar industries and similar verticals. So leverage that internal expertise, even if it's not with that specific company. They have an idea if they're used to working within that industry.
Yeah. I think you bring up a really good point there too, Laura. I think as you're doing, whether it's account reviews or opportunity reviews, thinking about those buying groups, having a collaborative conversation, with your team, whether it is, I think we lost Jess.
Whoops.
Okay.
Okay.
But having that,
I'll give her a minute, keep going.
but having that collaborative conversation around the buying group, I think for us, as we do our internal reviews of our accounts and opportunities, more than once, it's like, hey, have you thought about, trying to reach out to this person or that person, or, even asking like, hey, have you thought about like, why isn't this person involved? We typically see this person involved in this type of buying group. So having those sort of team conversations internally as you're going through either deal by deal or account by account to just get that feedback internally. I think just your team is a wealth of knowledge for who you might be bumping into, and validating it against that, whether or not you've got the right people or whether there might be people that you need to pull in.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Even like as you were saying that, I was thinking, well, the other example too would be, if you're trying to sell into a company or an industry that, I used to work for or work within or have as a customer, there's just, you don't know what you don't know. So you may as well just put it out there and see if anybody has something that can help you out.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna skip ahead here. And this is one that the expanding buying group is something that is near and dear to my heart. And this is something that we've seen really changing. I think it not only, over the past 10 years, but I think it really exploded during the pandemic. Just as folks were getting more and more conscientious about spending and really looking for solutions that solve challenges across not only within different teams, but sort of across different areas of the organization. I think we started to see this rapid growth in the buying group. And I think, it used to be what, it was 4 folks, or I forget what the number is. I think it was 7 to 10 were numbers that I saw pre 2017. And now I've seen buying groups as big as like 15 or 16 individuals, selling enterprise software. So, I mean, the size of the buying group is huge. Jess, I know you guys are selling into really the financial services, right? Or into retailers rather. Have you noticed the buying groups are growing for you as well, or have things sort of stayed the same?
They're growing slightly. We're very specific with who our personas are, especially in the retail group. We're looking at those that are interacting and doing promotions and things like that. But we are starting to see those groups grow as incentivizing customers to come into whatever that retailer is becoming more and more critical, especially after COVID. And we're trying to get feet back into the brick and mortar shops. Mm-hmm. It just kind of depends. Sometimes their digital side will grow and the retail side will shrink. But yeah, overall, I would say we're seeing some slight increases as well in the buying groups we engage with.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is a good point to note too. This is where we start, as the groups are growing, this is where we start to see some of those personas that we typically wouldn't engage with starting to pop into these buying groups. So for us at Revegy, one of the ones that popped out of nowhere was really a dedicated financial buyer because no one owns their budget anymore. So for us, one of the things that we started seeing was either a VP of finance or CFO persona really starting to play a more predominant role in that buying decision. And that was something that we had never seen before. Just as, but as budgets get tighter and those spending decisions start to span different groups within the organization, we're starting to see that sort of one person owns that whole budget versus the individual divisions being able to own that budget on their own. Yeah. The other thing that we're seeing too is the number of interactions drastically increasing, and I think that this is probably a product of the increasing buyer groups. And so for us, when we think about the number of times that we're actually interacting with our buyers, they're going through the roof. As you can see, we've almost doubled from 2017 to 2021 just with those interactions. And I know anecdotally that's been the case for us. I think we're probably averaging slightly higher than 27 interactions between from start to finish. And I think that's definitely part of just the expanding buying groups and needing to interact with all these different personas as these decisions are being made.
Yeah, I would just make the point too, is something that's changed out of, since 2020. I hate to bring up the pandemic yet again, but it truly did change the way that people manage the budgets and who truly owns the budget. So, the head of sales might own his or her budget, but he's still got to go get that final approval from the CFO because we've had this uncertainty. And, my fear is maybe it's not a fear, we're used to it now, but I think that's going to continue, especially as we're heading into potentially a recession. Those budget owners are going to become not quite what they were in the past or what we're used to selling into.
Yeah. I think one of the key things there, though, right? Because I usually like to be the one to be negative, but one of the key things there is if we can anticipate who those personas are, and again, that's understanding from past interactions, folks that we've dealt with, leaning on our teams, leaning on marketing to see who's engaging with our content. I think one of the biggest things there is really working with our champions within that buying group and being able to understand, okay, you're going to need to present a business case to this new financial buyer. So what can we do to build that business case and really enable that person to sell internally to that financial buyer? Because for me personally, I've never, in most cases, I don't meet that person who ultimately holds the budget. I have to work with folks on that within that buying group who are interacting with us on a daily or weekly basis. And enable them to put that business case together in a way that's going to resonate with that financial buyer. All right. I love this slide because I think it is so accurate. I think one of the things that we see as sellers is we really try to go linear, right? We put our sales process together and we've got all our stages in Salesforce and we've got all the steps that we need to do at each of those stages, right? But one of the things that I think we really need to remember is we need to do our best to align our sales process with the buyer's evaluation and buying process. And we kind of talked a little bit about that earlier, right? Even just aligning when does that buying process actually start versus that initial research and evaluation stage. But as we're going through, if you think about all the different stakeholders that we have in those buying groups now, and you think about all the different competing priorities that they may have, right? If we think about, for us, for instance, when we look at selling into sales organizations, we often bump into, again, sales enablement, revenue operations, we bump into marketing, right? if you think about all the different conversations that they're having and the different people that are being introduced into those conversations, right? It's impossible for the buyer to have sort of a linear journey through that buying process. And I think it's really helpful for us to understand that one, it's not going to be linear. And two, as our buyers are going through this, it's also a really great qualification exercise for us to understand, okay, is our champion going to give us this information? Like, where are they in the process? Who else are they going to loop in? And what implications is looping those individuals going to have on the process that we have going forward? So I think for us, oh, sorry, Jess, didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, that's okay. Apologies. I had some internet issues, so I was just dialing back in. That is so true. I just wanted to reiterate the fact that the buying cycle is not linear anymore, and it's even not linear internally. We going through some security measures and upgrades to security measures last year. Our buying cycle changed and increased the amount of people that we now have engaged in purchasing decisions, as well as the amount of groups that we interact with. And as you know, during our cycle, I learned internally of new processes that didn't exist 3, 4, 5, 6 months ago. So it is something that is not linear, and it may not be that your buyers necessarily know everything up front, but you're walking through that journey with them. And the more rapport you build with a client while you're going through that buying cycle, I think the easier it is to help them navigate it, even internally, just by asking those questions of who else, and what is a potential stopping point? What is a potential barrier? Do you foresee anything that might cause us to hit a roadblock? So just wanted to tag that on.
Yeah, well, I think that was something, you mentioned building that rapport. I think that was something that we did really well. And we actually, we sort of took a two-pronged approach, right? We even went down the path of, okay, what is our actual evaluation plan, right? And we needed to actually go through that together sort of repeatedly as you learn new things about your buying process, right? We went through and we updated that plan together live, and we went through, and updated those steps or added steps. And I think the other thing we did a really good job of too is we actually went through and we would bring up those risks proactively with each other, and put that plan in place for if this roadblock does happen, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah, and I think that's actually a very critical thing, and one of the biggest takeaways I had from our purchasing, interactions and buying interactions was that we did this together and we talked through what are our strategies if we do hit this buying point roadblock. Because, the decision to get to the point of making the purchase, that wasn't terribly hard to get to, but for us internally in our specific instance, getting through all of the back end processes of making that purchase, a reality is where we kind of caught into some roadblocks. And walking through those together really showed a true partnership. And I think that is what buyers are looking for. They're looking for a partnership and not just something to say, yep, check the box. I need this. It's a software. Let me plug and play. They're looking for true partnerships that can help them grow and meet the goals that their company is trying to work for.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, our VP of sales sent me an article the other day, and the title of the article is like, yes, it is important that your buyers like you.
It's true. It's true. I mean, companies tend to buy from people they know and trust. And companies that are engaging with new vendors that they don't have a history with, you guys are a perfect example, building that trust up front with knowledge of who you're buying, but knowledge of who you're engaging with from a selling perspective, because we've already done our research on who we're buying. So it goes back to what we said earlier, researching on both sides is critical. And then building that trust pretty quick out of the gate is going to be really the biggest first step to building that relationship.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think having that plan in place just reinforces that. One of the things I'll talk about this a little bit later, but I always go back to who do you need to talk to? What do they care about? And then what's your plan for engaging with them? And I think sharing that plan with your project champion, and ultimately it ends up being really with the whole buying group, right? I think having that level of transparency as a salesperson is critical, right? You're asking your buyer for so much information, right? It's like, who else do we need to talk to? What is your process? What's your decision criteria, right? And if you're not upfront, with your buyer and with your buying group, why should you expect them to be transparent with you?
Exactly.
All right. Gonna skip ahead here. And so we've talked about this a little bit here, but I think one of the things that I would encourage anybody to do is, whether you're using an enablement or an execution tool like Revegy, whether you're using spreadsheets or Salesforce or however you're collecting your contacts, work with your marketing team, work with other folks in your organization. And absolutely sort of build out that template for who are these folks that I'm generally going to need to talk to. I can't tell you how often I interact with our marketing team to figure this out. Just as we look into different industries and as we evolve our ICP, these guys are the ones that they have all that data, right? And I think that there's no need for us in sales to recreate the wheel. We can really leverage the folks in our organization to figure out, okay, who might we need to talk to, right? We've got this opportunity on our plate, or we've got this account that we're managing, right? Let's make sure that we're as efficient as possible and use all the data at our disposal, so that we're able to either advance that deal, or so that we're able to manage that account and maintain it, so that the customer stays happy and we're talking to the right people and communicating value in the right way.
Yeah, I like to make the point here too of, if you're using, this is a screenshot of our relationship maps, so you can see how the different people in the buying group interact. But before this is created, there's no way to see that. Salesforce isn't set up to show you a buying group as people come in. It's difficult to uncover, how many people from Blackhawk have downloaded an ebook. You're going to have to manually go pull that in most cases. So that's A, why it's important to talk to marketing, but B, it's something to be aware of too, because it's phenomenal if Jess downloads 5 ebooks. But what gives me more information is if 6 people at Blackhawk download an ebook. And then I'm starting to see, okay, there's an actual initiative here and more people than just Jess care about it. Not that you're not important, Jess, but you have multiple people in your purchasing group. If you can start to figure out a way to pull that information together, you're going to have a much more clear view of what's truly going on within the customer or prospect.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll note too is having a template in place. It also helps you identify those blind spots or gaps in your buying group. So that is one of the extra. I actually like to do that live. Jess and I did it together.
We did.
Multiple times, and I see, who else, they ask who else. I don't think we have enough fingers and toes between us to count how many times I asked that. But having the template in place and being able to sort of fill in the blank and to say, we typically engage with this person, or, at this point in the process, we typically see this persona, right? That's super helpful, right? Because, when we're going through, whether it's account management or whether it's opportunity management, oftentimes, we're not always managing one opportunity or one account at a time, right? We're often managing multiple. And so when the fog of war sets in, right, sometimes as salespeople, we tend to get happy years, right? It's like, okay, I've got this great contact and, getting tons of information. And we sort of put those blinders on where we say, okay, this is good, right? And having that reality check of a template to say, what, there's other areas that I need to be doing research, right? I need to go ask Jess for an introduction to whether it's procurement or, or whoever, or the VP of sales, or whoever it might be, right? But just having that as a guide to say, okay, I need to make sure that I'm expanding my reach within the organization, and having conversations with the right people is critical. And again, that's going to be critical, whether it's new opportunity, whether it's managing an account, and just being able to understand where we sit today, versus where we need to be if we're going to be successful. We've already talked about I've talked about the new personas. Jess, and for me, it's the finance folks coming out of nowhere in post 2020. Jess, are you guys seeing anybody new that's popped into your buying groups?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing a little bit more of finance engagement. It's almost like instead of just having that be a behind the scenes process with the buying group, finance is becoming part of the buying group and interacting with the company, the seller, even earlier in the cycle. And I think it does go back to that whole everybody started tightening budgets and things like that. And now that's just kind of the way that we're starting to work more.
Yeah. Totally agree. It's interesting. Even across industries, we're seeing the same personas pop up. So I guess if there's one takeaway here, make sure your finance persona is on your relationship now.
Definitely.
All right. So what's next? Like, where do we go from here? Right. And we've talked about building out this buying group, right? And it's like, we've made it sound really scary. It's growing. There's more people, there's more competing priorities. There's more criteria for how decisions are being made because of the number of people and the different things that are important to them. So how do we get through this, right? I could sit here and say our jobs are getting more difficult, and they are. But how do we get through it? And so I go back to the questions that I need to be asking myself. Who do we need to be engaged with, right? So again, just as a recap, work with your teams, figure out who those personas are, and then work with your project champions, right? Always asking, who else do we need to engage? Who else do we need to engage? The next piece that I think is critical here, right, is knowing that you've got all these different personas and that they may have different lenses that they're doing the evaluation through, or even different priorities, right? Even within a sales organization that we're selling into, KPIs that Jess has in revenue operations might be slightly different than the KPIs that the VP of sales cares about, which are going to be different than the KPIs that the VP of marketing cares about, right? So understanding what each of those different personas cares about, right? What's going to move the needle for them, right? Because we already know the number of interactions within these buying groups is going through the roof, right? So we're going to have more conversations with each of these people. We're going to have a chance to share that value with each of them, and understanding what they care about and being able to share that with them throughout the buying journey is going to be critical. And then the final piece, right? We know who we're talking to. We know what they care about. Make sure you have a plan in place to engage with them, right? How are you going to engage with each of those personas? How are you going to get introductions to those various personas that pop up throughout the buyer's journey? And as Jess and I said before, make it mutual. This isn't just your plan. This is when you're working with your project champion. What do they need to do too, and what are the things that you can support them in, so that they can make the best decision for their company, right?
Definitely. And with all of those questions, and as you just stated, the buying groups are getting bigger and things feel harder, just making sure that you understand to expect high interactions, right? We had more interactions than I can think about, than I can even think to count right now, and expect to be vetted numerous number of times, because as somebody new comes into the buying cycle process, there's going to be some vetting again with those different lenses that Chris was just talking about. But having that really solid relationship and that mutual plan with especially your champion is what's going to help you move that selling process forward, and the buyer move the buying process forward, and hopefully shrink it down a little bit for both sides.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great point too, Jess. When you have that plan and you share your plan, and you can sort of educate your buyer a little bit. If you identify blind spots for your buyer, right, you can absolutely move things along so much faster, right? As opposed to bumping into it. And it's like, oh God, like now we've got something new. We've got this new hurdle. We can proactively prepare for it, right?
Right.
And address it in stride, which I think is absolutely critical. And I think it leads to a better experience overall.
Agreed.
All right. Well, we're already to questions. Wow, we were
We went
cruising.
through that quickly. Nice.
We were close, yes.
Yeah, we covered a lot in like 35 minutes there.
I love it. I should have mentioned at the beginning too. I normally do. I was late joining, so I was a little flustered today. But we like the Q&A throughout the call, or questions, commentary in the chat. If y'all have any of those, please drop them in now. I'll be happy to pass them along to our host here. I had one out of the gate too. As you were talking through, both of you, the new CFO persona. Are you working with marketing to develop that persona and have some documentation around it? And B, are you leveraging your internal finance department to understand what this person cares about, or if they could put themselves in a potential customer's shoes, what should we as a sales team or as a marketing team be thinking about to help their buying process move along?
I mean,
So I can start on.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Jess.
Okay, well, from my side of the house, I can definitely say yes to both. I know that our sales team, and we encourage our sales team to engage with marketing to help identify and understand the personas, especially if we come across a new persona that we're starting to see more frequently, or even from a regional perspective, we might start seeing a role in finance that's popping up in the EMEA area or the APAC area that we've seen in the US, but maybe haven't seen in those regions. So we do kind of work with marketing in that regard. And then personally, have always had those conversations with the finance group to just say, okay, on both sides too. From a buyer's perspective, what are the things I need to be thinking about when I'm buying? And then if you were the buyer, what would the seller need to be thinking about? Like what would you be looking for? So I'm going to say yes to both of those.
You get an A.
And Laura already knows my answer. We work very closely with marketing to figure out those personas. I would say that's probably an area that we could improve, is actually working with our internal finance team and thinking a little bit more about what they care about during the buying process and some of the evaluation that they do. Like as we buy, I mean, we've bought plenty of software internally, right? So what are the things that they care about when they're looking at, whether it's cost benefit or or if they're doing ROI calculations, right? But what maybe some of those are some of the things that we could probably use in our sales process to better arm our prospects and our project champions as they're going through their buying processes.
Mm-hmm. Well, and by the same token too, we're starting to see a little bit more of it, especially with Blackhawk being the nature of your business, understanding the security requirements and talking to your people internally and legal about data privacy and what requirements do we need to put together a one-sheeter on all of the different security certifications that we have, or from that aspect, it's only going to get crazier. So something else we should be thinking about.
Yeah, I remember when I started selling software, it was easy. It was you send your SOC report over, they take a look at it, and they come back with a list of questions, and it's like, okay, do we have anything that we need to remediate or not? And now I think security is a lot more than that. It's like we want to see your reports. We want to see we've got this questionnaire that we're going to ask for all these different use cases for how the software might interact. So that's another one. It wasn't so much of a shock. I think we've seen the implications of poor security just globally in the past, right? So that wasn't a shock, and it sort of crept up on us. But that's definitely something that we as sellers need to be thinking about.
Got a question here about tracking the changes in buying groups, given this great resignation and everybody's hiring. Turnover's pretty difficult across the board. What are some tips for managing turnover in the buying process and ensuring that you even catch wind of it?
Jess, you want to go first?
I was going to let you go first on that one.
Well, sure. So for me, and again, I keep my maps up to date. And one of the things that I love doing is I love sharing my relationship maps and validating those with buying groups, right? So as we hear about changes, or as we're reviewing those maps, rather, that's typically when I hear about those changes. Is as we're going through the map, it's like, okay, is this person still going to be involved? What do we need to do with this person? If there are changes that happen, I'm usually hearing about it from our clients or prospects as we go through those reviews. And obviously having the relationship map makes it really easy, because it's like you see people's names up on the screen and where they sit within the organization. So it makes it really apparent for folks as we're going through it together. Oh, actually, you might want to change that because this person is no longer there, or this person got promoted, or we hired a new person. So for me, that's the way that I'm doing it, really on a regular basis. And that goes back to the transparency and the partnership that we talked about. It's, I think, having that relationship with your project champion and ultimately with that buying group to be able to have those conversations and work through it together, so that, again, who are we talking to? What do they care about? And then how are we going to engage with them?
Yeah, Chris, and I think that's really a best practice, and again speaks to the working collaboratively and mutually towards the project goal. Taking just 2 minutes to review that relationship map, maybe at the beginning of a call, at a set cadence, whatever it may be, not overkill. Of course, you don't want to do overkill, but that's the way that even the buyer may go, oh, wait, yeah, no, you know what, now that I see this, so-and-so has moved on, or so-and-so has been assigned to a different project, and now we're going to be bringing in so-and-so. So I think that having that relationship map and just even taking a minute or 2 minutes to just have that conversation periodically and make sure that you're staying up to date is critical.
Mm-hmm.
All right, y'all. It looks like we're slowed down on the questions here, so we'll go ahead and wrap it up. But I really appreciate your time today, Chris, Jess. It's been phenomenal having you on. Thank you for joining us. And if anybody has any questions, feedback, comments, please feel free to email any of us, and we will also be sending out the recording. Just give us a little bit to get it all packaged, but that'll be in your inbox here in the next day or so. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.